A very good evening to you and welcome to Rwanda Television News. My name is Sam Kalisa. With just 1 week to go before the next education level of schools reopen, education officials in the country are assessing the COVID-19 impact 2 weeks after the first group of students returned to school. Officials in the Ministry of Education said that the school reopening operation will remain on schedule. Serge Nore kickstarts tonight's bulletin with this report.
Schools in Rwanda had been closed for 8 months before students were allowed to return 2 weeks ago. And education officials say 89% of primary students are attending classes again, with the figure at 91% for secondary school students. Kigali City has the highest number of students that have not yet reported back to school. Kigali City is at 85% in primary schools. The southern province is at 94.5%, the northern province at 89.3%, the eastern province at 89.2%, the western province at 84.2%, and the average is 89% for all primary schools that have reopened. As for secondary schools, that is to say Senior 3, 5 and 6, TVET and TTC, those who have returned in Kigali City are at 85.4%. For the south, it's 92.1%, 93.5% for the north, 92% for the east, and 89.4% for the west. The average sits at 91% for students in secondary schools. The ministry's officials also announced that COVID-19 tests are to be carried out at all schools that have reopened, with 2,500 tests carried out in primary and secondary schools and another 500 in universities and other institutions of higher learning. The minister did emphasize, however, that positive results do not mean automatic closures for schools again. The guidelines do not say that we instantly close all schools in the country, but rather deal with individual schools accordingly. You know that all schools have isolation chambers for sick children. The reason for that is because the possibility had been considered. So let it be clear that if a large number of sick children is found at one school, others supposed to go there will wait until we deal with that problem. We must first decide on how to proceed if such cases become evident, and though we hope things do not prove serious, we must also consider the possibility, and if it does happen, then we will follow the provided guidelines. The problem of teacher shortages in schools has also persisted, with more than 14,000 needed in primary schools and more than 3,500 in secondary schools.
Primary schools,
in primary schools, teachers who have been given appointment letters, those we had on waiting lists since 2019, and those who sat for interviews in July this year, number 3,732. However, we need a total of 18,039. That means we still have a gap of 14,307 to fill. In secondary schools, we have appointed 2,673 of the 4,045 candidates that we had. That means 65% of those who applied were given jobs, and the rest are to be given places as soon as possible, as the minister noted. In secondary schools, we need another 6,371 teachers. The need for more teachers is likely to go up, with just 95% of teachers before the lockdown having returned to work.
And now, moving ahead, an update into justice matters. Today, the Rwanda prosecution filed in the High Court the substantive case indicting 18 MRCD FLN members accused of crimes including terrorism, murder, abduction, and arson. I repeat this. Today, the prosecution filed in the High Court the substantive case indicting 18 MRCD FLN members accused of crimes including terrorism, murder, abduction, and arson. And now, moving ahead, students and teachers say that they are doing everything in their power to protect themselves from the COVID-19 as classes continue in different schools in the country. Serge Nore continues.
At the different schools we visited, we could see that preventive measures were being implemented, and the students we talked to said they were getting accustomed to them. The hardest thing to get used to was the face masks. At first it was hard for us, especially standing up and answering questions, because your voice would be muffled. However, we are now getting accustomed to it and have learned to speak loud enough for the teacher to hear us. We respect social distancing guidelines, and kids no longer crowd together in the playgrounds as we used to do before the pandemic playing football. We no longer do that. At Muhima Primary School, some students have been trained to enforce the preventive measures, reminding others when they begin to appear to become lax towards them. Teachers also say the students have not been giving them any trouble when it comes to respecting the guidelines, and school administrators say maximum effort is being put to prevent any COVID-19 outbreaks on their premises. Top officials in the Ministry of Education say implementing the measures has largely gone smoothly, though challenges do crop up from time to time. Putting children together and then instructing them not to go near each other, touch each other, or not play, and to wear face masks is bound to be difficult. They generally follow these regulations, but you must keep reminding them to do so. Our guidelines state that there should be 23 students in a classroom, but at some schools we found it to be impossible to implement. We have also allowed that 2 students share a desk, but each must sit on either end, leaving adequate space between. Also, after people were allowed to once again sit in vehicles at full capacity, we did not see a problem with 2 students sharing a desk. Where possible, 1 student can use an entire desk on their own, but at some schools it just cannot be done because of the situation they are in. School administrators have been urged to ensure that all preventive measures are respected.
Now, parents in the first and second categories of the Ubudehe program say that the Shisha Kibondo program has improved the lives of their children. The management of the National Early Childhood Development Program said that they plan to provide pregnant mothers and children under the age of 2 with Shisha Kibondo have been productive, because since the launch of the program in 2016, child malnourishment has dropped by 12.8% among children who received Shisha Kibondo. Martina Abera tells us more on this.
Wineza Donata, a woman with 5 children living in Kabare sector in Kayonza district. She's in the first category of Ubudehe. For this mother who is carrying a child of 1.5 years, is happy that ever since she was pregnant with her child, she has been getting Shisha Kibondo flour. It was great for me because you can see that my kids are doing well. My baby is now 1.5 years old. I started when she was only 6 months, and we started with the yellow one for a mother. When the child is now 6 months, they shift to the green one. They started giving it to me, then I began with 2 packets. Then when the child reached 9 months, they gave me 4 packets. It has really helped me a lot because I would give it to my child and she would really respond well to it. Now my child has 12 kilograms and is only 1.5 years. According to Muteterimana Pauline, a resident of Kabarondo in Kayonza district, she says she is one of the people who were allowed to get Shisha Kibondo flour, but most of the time would not see herself on the list of those supposed to receive it because she would shift to different cells from time to time. She says her 2-year-old child has reached the age of the yellow package. Since I was moving from one village to another, I would get there and not get recognized, which also led to me not knowing what was going on. Then when I would finally find out, it would be too late. Nevertheless, even though my child was never in the red category, she still got in the yellow one, even though she immediately got out. The state's policy on child development programs began in 2011, but will be revised in 2016 with Shisha Kibondo's program that started in 2016. The flour adds nutrients to a pregnant woman's body every month. Nursing mothers and children between the ages of 6 and 24 months in the first and second Ubudehe categories, those in the first category are given it in all 30 districts, while those in the second are among the 13 most malnourished districts in the country. A report by the Auditor General of the Government of 2019 shows that there are 5 districts that have not received the same amount of flour from children under 2 years of age, which had been requested at a rate of less than 50%, and the flour of pregnant women has not been available in 12 districts at a rate of less than 50%. In this report, Kayonza district appears in both categories. National Early Childhood Development Program Coordinator Dr. Anita Asimwe says the amount of shisha kibondo that was needed was available.
ubundi ukuntu biteguwe burigomba kugera mu karere.
The way things are is that the flour that is expected to reach the region, if there is any additional material to be added in the period of a month and there was a delay, in the report made, it should be indicated, then they receive what they were supposed to, and some of the problems we encounter at the time were that some of the ingredients of the factories used are imported from other countries. There are times when there is a delay in what they need to use. So we make sure that each district will provide them only with what they need so that we can be able to distribute evenly to other districts. A 5-year DHS study, the latest in 2015, found that the child malnourishment was 38%, with 13 regions having the highest child malnourishment percentage in the 30 Rwandan districts with 13%. Since then, the severity of child malnourishment in Rwanda was evident due to some of the districts having high percentages. Since the launch of the Shisha Kibondo program, it has reached more than 320,000 beneficiaries, of which 223,461 are children, while the number of parents is 105,000. In 2019, figures show that children benefiting from Shisha Kibondo, the malnourishment decreased by 12.8%. Normally, 80% of the child's brain grows in its first 3 years. When a child is malnourished at an early age, it affects his or her performance in school as it damages the functioning of the brain. Dr. Anita Asimwe, the National Early Childhood Development Program Coordinator, says that the mother should take the lead in determining how the child will live before birth. The role of the mother must be understood before she gives birth, and it should not come as a shock, and they say that they didn't know that raising a child was very time-consuming and something that takes so much strength, which is why we continue to encourage Rwandans to give birth to children that they can manage to raise. There are currently more than 25,000 households still in the National Child Development Centers, and there is a goal that in every cell there should be at least 3 National Child Development Centers. The Rwandan government's Shisha Kibondo program has an annual budget of about 14 billion Rwandan francs. Martina Abera, RTV News.
Thank you very much, Martina, for that report. Moving forward, this Monday, the 16th of November 2020, 6 men suspected of robbing different supermarkets across the country were paraded in front of the media. The Rwanda National Police has announced that these suspects got caught carrying 2.5 million Rwandan francs. Ghislaine Mugwaneza has the details.
Elin Nyirangirimana and Gire Muhineza are among the victims of the robbery that happened in the supermarkets. They said that these robbers used to come and check if there is only one person in the supermarket. One of them could come and ask many questions to spend much time with the seller, while another one is robbing. They parked the car in front of my supermarket. I was walking alone, and they told me to get out to ask me something. I got out. One of their men got out of the car. I didn't care about where he was going. I thought he's going to buy bread on the nearest supermarket. They kept asking the cost of withdrawing 200,000 Rwandan francs and the cost of 600,000 Rwandan francs. I told them to let me check on the tariff inside, and they told me that I'll bring them at once. They robbed 1.1 million Rwandan francs from me.
They asked me questions, and one of them entered and took the money because he already knew where the money was kept. They robbed 415,000 Rwandan francs from me.
These suspects were caught riding Toyota Jeep TXL. They have said that they started robbing after the lockdown.
When we reached at Gisenyi, someone called Oreste, and the driver called the supermarket owner and asked a lot. One called Patrick entered and robbed 700,000 Rwandan francs. After doing that, we divided it and spent 2 days in Gisenyi and came back. After 2 weeks, Vita rented a car again, and we went to Butari and robbed 320,000 Rwandan francs.
RNP spokesperson CP John Bosco Kabera has said that the number of the victims is still low, but assures that if the suspects get convicted, they will be held accountable.
Umuntu uri Nyagatare wibwe nareba televiziyo uyu munsi akumva radio Rwanda aravuga ati ba bantu babafashe banyibye.
Now the person who lives in Nyagatare district that listens to Radio Rwanda will know that robbers that robbed them have been arrested. They will come to court and accuse the suspects, as well as telling what they robbed from them. So far we know that they robbed 2.5 million Rwandan francs. The person in Rubavu who listens to the radio and watches TV will go in court to get the compensation. Same as the one in Murindi and in Huye district. Let's tell people that smuggling is not allowed. Robbery is not allowed. They should stop committing crimes.
ubujura ntibwemewe abantu ntibakora ibikwiye gukorwa bareke ibyaha.
Except these suspects, there is a woman that is also suspected of importing smuggled second-hand clothes, and 6 bales of clothes were caught. The RNP has also urged car owners to be more vigilant when renting their cars, because of the fact that they get sold in auction when caught in such crimes.
Now, moving forward into economic matters, the Central Corridor Transit Transportation Facilitation Agency has called on countries whose corridor to work together to eliminate all trade hindrances. During a meeting that brought together partners and stakeholders from Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, the agency's executive secretary noted that the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. There were many joint projects in place to facilitate regional trade being implemented. Captain Dieudonné Dukundane therefore noted that the sort of cooperation between countries that was seen during the lockdown facilitating the movement of goods across international borders when all other movements was restricted should continue even after the threat of the pandemic has completely passed. Officials from Rwanda's Ministry of Infrastructure that currently chairs the TTFA's Board of Governors noted that different projects agency has continued to pursue in order to better facilitate regional trade, such as the consideration of Rwanda and DRC maritime transportation laws so that ports and ferries constructed between the two countries benefit both sides when it comes to transporting goods and passengers. The Rwandan officials also noted that the country has continued preparing and upgrading roads that link countries that use Central Corridor for the trade, especially the Democratic Republic of Congo. And on behalf of the entire news team that made this happen, thank you very much for being with us. My name is Sam Kalisa. Please do remember that COVID-19 is still around and your part in eradicating the virus is still crucial. Let's be part of the movement. Until next time, have a good evening and a fruitful week ahead.